yeah, I feel it's an honor. And the opportunity to go deeper within and to offer people the opportunity to go on that exploration within to find out what's actually going on, what resistance, what blocks, what comes up, what's preventing us from going deeper is always a blessing to me. So, the invitation was too overwhelmingly beautiful to resist.
And we were just talking before we hit that go live button, right? And we were talking about the ultimate intention, the intention that has materialized into this virtual spa weekend, and it really amounts to this being what we are, right? Being the love of what we are. And you you use that term transactional love versus, letting go of transactional love and sinking into something else. And I'd love for you to expand on that.
Well, we're raised in the model of self, ego self, the self that arises through childhood, through youth, is forged into the identity of this individuation, Kavi, Cindy, anybody else. Yeah, here we are. And we're somehow uh, trained, convinced, and there's a very real quality to it that the fullness of myself, the realization of my love, the worthiness that I have, because we always have to talk about worthiness if we're going to talk about the deepest of love. Uh, and that kind of sense of self is usually born out of the idea that we have to be filled somehow from the outside in. So we look outside ourselves and say, we scan our territory or think, what is it in the outside, the apparent outside world that's going to give me what I need to feel complete in some kind of way? And that obviously, sets us up for a whole myriad number of kind of potential issues, really. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it because it's what happens in the world, but then at a certain point something might be realized within that actually that's not satisfactory. It doesn't To realize that it doesn't actually give me what it is that I truly want. It doesn't actually fill me. It doesn't completely satisfy me. I'm reaching out in the way of an addict to try and get something, to try and get something. I get it. It's sad, it's the romantic love. I get it. It satisfies. I fall in love. This is it. This is my dream. I fall out of love. Something goes wrong. Two selves, the two selves of relationship start doing battle and it all crumbles again. The myth really of romantic love. And so the invitation in a way is it possible for us to find something deeper within ourselves that has no need of transaction, that has no need of somebody else with all of their foibles, with all of their wounds, with all of their case history, if you like, to satisfy something in us? We don't need that anymore. And that is a journey. That's not it's not something that can just be kind of thought into being. It means we have to really journey within ourselves to find out, what is it that I think that I need? What is it that I think that I can get from the outside world that isn't actually within me already? Do I need approval? Am I seeking the approval? In fact, am I seeking approval of mummy and daddy still in my life? Am I seeking my worth from the outside world? Why am I doing that? Why am I giving away my authority all the time? Why am I giving away my worthiness? These are profoundly deep questions. And I mean, that's where I like to go, into the profoundly deep questions, because it is possible. I mean, my case history is my history. I'm a person who couldn't say love, couldn't talk about love, was highly dependent on women to, relationships to approve of me, to to hold me, to make me safe, all of these kind of things. And again, I have to say there's nothing wrong with that, but to go deeper than that into oneself and to see that actually I'm coming from a wounded place. I was coming from a wounded place. And when eventually, by and by, through a whole path of transformation, I arrived at something deeper, and I didn't. I kind of stopped coming from a wounded place, and that's the journey. That's the journey. That's my invitation. Is what does it mean for us to no longer come from a wounded place? That's not to say they just disappear. We brush over them. This is a genuine path of being able to hold oneself, to relate as if we still have the wounds. I still have the wounds of my past, but they don't drive my behavior. So what does drive my behavior? That's the question. So I've given you a lot of things there uh, to play around with.
What does drive your behavior?
I don't want to be glib about it, but the bottom line, I would say that now love as demystified, love as presence, love as showing up, love as being here, you know, even in vulnerability, even in sensitivity. Yeah, no whitewashing over it. Yeah, no uh trickster, no subtle maneuvering around, skirting around um, the issue. No transaction in the sense of no collusion. These kind of things. I'm in relationship with the mode of Ma. Yeah, I've learned that relationship is two types of relationship. One that actually does start to bury stuff, secret stuff under the rug, under the carpet, or else there's another type of relationship that commits to not doing that, to dealing with what's arising, to being honest, to be honest enough to own what's arising. And that's no small thing to say, because it means you're called to transparency all of the time. And that's love. That's love. That's the essence of love, called to transparency all the time and settling actually for nothing less. That's demanding because we haven't been brought up in that way. We've been brought up, in a way that kind of pays lip service to that. We put on the mask, two selves wearing a mask. But behind the mask is something else. Is like, hold on, what's behind the mask? What's in the shadow bag? What's lurking off, yeah, in the shadows? And I believe that to live life not from that paradigm, not from that place anymore, is that drives my behavior. A kind of a longing for authenticity all the time, all the time. And it's not a panacea. It's not a philosophy. It's not detached. This is the thing. A lot of spirituality can can become quite detached. I've realized the essential nature of my beingness, and now, the human condition, I see it down there somewhere and it looks dirty or it looks, so I kind of wash over it. No, no, no. I don't truck with that. That's like, well, let's get into the dirt. We're emotional beings. We have to include our bodies. We have to include our emotions. We have to include the karma of our past. We have to include the family relationships, the family dynamic as it's playing out in us. These are, to embrace those, to hold those, to know those, but to not be identified with those is the healing path. So I show up on the healing path, yeah, talking to others about it. I think people are suffering, and put my little drop of healing balm into the ocean to see if we could all heal together, because I think we're in a healing time in the world. We're in a very destructive time. We're in a very explosive time. We're in a very toxic time. We're in a very troubled time. And you look around and there's a lot of suffering. And that suffering isn't just because of finances or the politic. You know, that suffering is an existential suffering of buried pain and buried hurt and buried wounds. And you know, there's a shift. There's a shift out, potentially out of that paradigm. But it means that each of us has to take a deeper responsibility for it. Exciting, frightening, but the potential of it for the individual and the collective, I think, is beautiful. Is beautiful, because I don't think we can go on like this.
Yeah. One more question, and then we'll let you go. You've got a 90-minute session there on February 11th. When people come to join you for those 90 minutes, is there something that they should expect or intend? You know, what are they going to step into with you?
Well, I think we'll be talking about the path of the deepest acceptance of self, not the world. We're not going to deal with the world at the moment. You know, if we could get to just talking about the possibility of deeply accepting ourselves as we are, then I think that is a profound depth and transformation we can then take out to make our assessment of the apparent outside world. So it's like my invitation is going to be, if that stirs, excuse me, if that stirs you, then come along and let's talk about what stands in the way of that, because that's important. You know, what stands in the way of me deeply accepting myself exactly as I am in this moment? Because the implications of that possibility are that I have to accept a lot of things. I have to accept almost what happened to me. I have to accept how I feel about what happened, not what happened to me, but how I feel about what happened to me. I have to reconcile the past. I have to reconcile some of the grievances, the resistances. I have to come to terms with and explore some of the self-worth issues. And by God, and most people have self-worth issues. There's no shame in that. Let's get that out onto the table. I understand it completely, you know, but that's a beautiful one, because as long as we're transacting our self-worth, then we're chasing a rabbit down a hole, and it will never happen. You know, we have to take back our authority. But what does that mean? Because then it means we have to go into a deeper sense of our vulnerability, yeah, as these fragile beings that we are, with all of our tenderness and all of our anger and all of these qualities that we think we have to push down. So we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be unpacking some of that, you know, to see, you know, can we embrace our tenderness? Can we be ultimately so kind to ourselves without transaction, just because we've embodied our God nature? Can we embody our God nature? I don't mean that transactive God. I mean the God that is kind of radiantly, unconditionally present always, at all times, consciousness, awake, loving, benevolent, beautiful, radiant consciousness. We're going to explore that, I think, and I hope. And I like the, you know, part of the beauty is in some of the interactions, because we get to hear each other, and people, you know, they get to hear each other. And I like the Q&A time, because then we get to kind of dig deeper into the reality of it, not just pontificating from a teacher, but actually getting into the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty. And in the events that we've done, Amoda and I do, you know, some of the most juicy things are when people get to see each other. They get to see each other's vulnerability. They get to see each other's strength, get to see, you know, we're all the same. We're all dealing with the same issues. We're all dealing, you know, no matter who's where on the path, it doesn't matter. We're all dealing with the same problem or issue of being human at this time. And how do we reconcile that with our spiritual, you know, endeavor our spiritual inquiry. This juxtaposition between the human and the spiritual is where the rubber really hits the road. And that's my conversation. Yeah, take it out of the esoteric, take it out of the philosophy, and bring it down into the bare bones of our humanity. I love that. I love that. So that, that's kind of where we're going to go with this.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. Thank you
Beautiful.
for all the different ways you're showing up in the world, and looking forward to seeing you on February 11th.
Yeah. And what time was my session? In my session, I think is at, can you remember?
Your session will go from 1:30 to 3 Eastern Standard.
Eastern Standard Time. I look forward to it very much. I look forward to being part of a kind of nurturing, loving environment, and see if I can contribute something towards that. So thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Kavi. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon.